Good evening. Welcome to Cornerstone Home Inspector Education Center. Tonight, we have a little change up. Our original speaker had an issue, is not able to speak to us on solar panels tonight. So we're going to be talking about inspecting the exterior of a home. Our owner, Stan Bajerski, is going to be giving this presentation, and I'll turn it over to him.
Hey guys, thanks for attending tonight. So as Jim said, we have a little change of plans here. After 2 weeks of negotiating and changing the day, they still couldn't provide their webinar on solar panels. So we're going to talk about inspecting the exterior of a home. Could you change that up, Jim? So the exterior is generally an inspection of the conglomeration of components, some that may be related to other components addressed in other parts of your report, depending on how your report is set up. And most SOPs require inspection of the following items: exterior wall coverings, flashing trim, exterior doors, attached decks, balcony stoops, steps, porches and associated railings, eaves, soffits, fascia where accessible from the ground, vegetation, grading, surface drainage, retaining walls on properties where adversely affects the building, walkways, patios, driveways leading to dwelling entrances. That's from the state of Connecticut SOPs. So is the following. Our SOPs require that we inspect, describe exterior wall coverings, finishings, and trim. Most do not require inspectors to inspect screening, shutters, awnings, seasonal accessories, fences, geological, geotechnical, or hydrological conditions, recreational facilities, outbuildings, which in a previous webinar we talked about detached garages being considered outbuildings in most SOPs, seawalls, break walls, docks, or erosion control and earth stabilizing measures. Even though we don't see those kinds of things a lot, we do not have to inspect those. So when I first drive up to a piece of property, I kind of look at that as I'm driving either from the street or driving down the driveway, the overall lay of the land, right? So how does this surface drain, and is it draining away from the house? So ideally, we would like, and I think most builders, when a house is first built, will try to have a positive pitch away from the house, but those things obviously can change pretty quickly. It'll settle in around the house, but over time may not be what the builder intended it to be. So we're looking for overall rain runoff of the property, the finished grading, evidence of water control, and all these things, if we see them either in good shape or not, can be conducive to basement dampness and seepage, and that's a big thing. And there's a lot of things on the outside that contribute to that. So in that first picture, upper left, that grading is pretty good, but if where those Pachysandra are, that ground cover, if that's negative, we're still going to have an issue. So we got to get water from that point down to that little bit of a slope there, and we're in good shape. So in that house, that was kind of negative. There was some dampness in that basement. That downspout was just dumping right at the corner there. And I'm not a fan of that low-lying like Pachysandra stuff. So I always tell them to get rid of it and, you know, get your grading in order and extend your downspouts, and hopefully that makes an improvement. The picture to the right of that on the top is a newly flipped house where the builder again attempted to create some proper drainage, but also if you can see the erosion from the downspout, even though that's out on that kind of porch patio thing there, I still think it should have an extension so we can minimize that erosion. The picture underneath there is anytime I see drainage around the house, I don't think people just wake up one morning and say, hey, let's add some drainage in our backyard. So that's always a dead giveaway to me to be extra diligent in the basement, because they probably had some kind of issue in the past. And then the picture next to them, that was about a 25-year-old house with a little platform deck to the back entrance, and water just collected. There's a few more pictures I'll tie in when we go through the webinar. So water would just collect there, and at times got on top of that deck as well. So that had to be adjusted to stop that from happening. Vegetation. It can impact the condition and maintenance of the home. So I look for vegetation in contact with the home, overhanging tree limbs in contact with service entrance lines. You know, overhanging tree limbs are a big problem. I have an issue at my house. I have one tree in my house, and it is a fir tree, so it doesn't lose any leaves, and it's in the back of my property. But if you saw the trees on the left side of my house, I have butchered them. They're not mine, but I've cut. They look like one-sided trees because they get too close to my house and they create problems. I got a brand new roof on the house. I don't need the crap on there. It's got to be trimmed back. The stuff falls on there. You get lichen, you get moss, you get algae. You got to clear the roof to make that roof last as long as possible. Trees also, when they're in contact with the entrance cables, can do some damage to those cables. So that's something that we always should be bringing out. Those bottom lines are phone and cable. I tell them that those should be cleared as well. Those should have a clear, unimpeded path from the street to your home. Again, we have some, I tell people that they should be able to walk around their house shoulder width. The plants could discolor siding, could rot siding, and contact could allow insects into the home. And when I tell them that, they're all ready to take those big plants down and put some smaller ones there. And then last, again, the Pachysandra, which I believe hold a lot of water around the house. And I don't think I've ever really seen a completely dry basement. Maybe no seepage, but it has some dampness every time there's a couple feet of ground cover like that around the foundation. So those are things that I think should be addressed during a home inspection. Retaining walls. Assess the condition of retaining walls and their ability to function as intended. You know, they're made of a bunch of different materials, brick, stone, there's a concrete with no drainage. That wall's still doing its job. It's holding soil back, but when I see walls like that, the next day that thing could be on the ground. When people will ask, and I'm sure they've asked you, how long you think that'll last, there's no way to tell. That wall has to be rebuilt, and there's got to be some drainage in there. So you look for leaning, cracking, deterioration, loose material, presence, absence of drainage. That wall on the bottom right has no drainage. It was pretty straight. It looks kind of nasty there, but it wasn't really bad. But look how close to the house it is. If that thing goes over, who knows how much damage it can create. And then I love the deck being supported by the retaining wall. If that wall deteriorates, I mean, the deck is bolted to the house on the side where the orange and the blue both, but still, that's really not good practice. I don't think, anyways, to support a deck like that. Next page, Jim. Walkways, patios, driveways leading to dwelling entrances. So the condition of walkways, patios, driveways, and their ability to function as intended should be determined. Driveways, you know, you can drive on them until they turn into a bunch of rubble. But I think we need to indicate the general condition because it's a big expense to do a driveway properly. If you look at that one down in the left corner there where the pointer is right now, that was capped 3 times. There was 4, the original, and 3 layers of asphalt over the top of that. You still drive on it, probably drive on it for a long time, but you know, that's a costly repair right there, or replacement, I should say. So the state of Connecticut requires that we identify anything that's older and at the end of its useful life. So when I see something like that, that definitely makes that list. And then we have these ribbon driveways that could be asphalt, usually concrete. you know, they're functional as well, but I do make comments about how long they may last, and you know, do you want another ribbon driveway, or do you want a full asphalt driveway? Just so people know what they're up against after they move in the house.
Also, common driveways, you call that out if you're sharing a driveway to have the lawyers.
I talk about it because one of the problems, and you know, realtors hate it. They just want to know if it's functional or not. I had one the other day, as a matter of fact, in Middlebury. But the details of who was responsible for what were definitely written out. There was a portion that was gravel, was almost like a road. So everybody, there was 4 houses off this common driveway. Everybody had to kick in for every 2 years they put new gravel down. And then there was an asphalt portion of that. And then where the driveway is separated, obviously everybody was responsible for their own portions after they got off that common driveway. So who's going to plow it? You know, I mean, if it's not an association kind of thing, then you got to figure out who's going to plow it. The plow guy's not going to go over that part to get to your house, you know, and then plow just your driveway. It could be complicated. So a lot of the damage that I see to walkways and even driveways is from rain runoff, water runoff. You know, settlement like the one in the top right there, just leaning over to the side of the landscape bed. The offsets, which are tripping hazards, that's not an easy repair. You just don't lift that section of concrete up and stabilize it. Actually, I guess years ago, and I think it's still available, they call it mud jacking, where they drill a couple holes through there and put a lightweight concrete underneath and pump it in until the walkway levels. It's like, if that's still available, I guess that could be repaired that way. Tree roots on the so in Connecticut here, that soil from the walkway, no, the other one, Jim, on the bottom right, from the walkway to the street is the responsibility of the city, although homeowners cut the grass. So if you put or call them and tell them that your walkway's offset, someday they will come out and cut the roots and replace that section of concrete. So when I have that situation in an inspection I'm doing, I advise my clients to make that call to the city. So at least if somebody fell on there, you can tell them that you reported it to the local municipality. And then the one to the left of that.
Got it.
The one to the left of that is a repair that the town of my town, Milford, made. They cut that tree root out and replaced that concrete portion of the walkway. So I'm going to say in most municipalities it will get done, but they don't come out the next day. But I think you need to at least go on record with something in writing, a phone call, whatever, and make sure that they know about it. So just to, and there might be another picture, but the bottom left, that walkway goes down to that wood platform that was underwater in a previous picture. I wouldn't even walk on that thing. When I did that inspection, I just walked around that. That's as dangerous to me because the gravel wasn't level with the wood. There was no railing there. It's just, that was more dangerous than walking down the slope of the property, in my opinion. So on that top left one, would you recommend a railing for that walkway where the steps are? Just to protect yourself, your liability? I think I would. You know, you can go back there in 10 years and do the house again and then there's no railing, but at least you made the comment. That's the way I feel. Most people don't pay attention to that because they probably open that garage door and go in through the garage. But I make recommendations for that. And then the other two pictures are more water damage, just the flow of water undermining that concrete, it's cracking. There were no major offsets in that walkway, but I still write that up because eventually that's going to just, the material is going to loosen. It's going to be a problem. And then the bottom right, more grading problem. So there's that deck again with that, where the water was accumulating enough for that to be underground. Hold on, Jim.
Oh, do you want me to go back up or?
No, I got something on my screen. Okay. And then the upper right, there's another patio that can get underwater, and the stone dust was coming to the surface there. Just concrete deterioration underneath that. These are all things that really need to be addressed in your report. Whether people want to fix them or not, that's another thing. But and then the loose pavers in the other one, that's an issue. No matter how much that gets used, you got to write that up. And I consider them potential safety issues as well. So this is not the solar seminar. They knocked out on us. Exterior wall coverings. So my report, I got a whole section for that, but we're doing that while we're outside. So we're going to look at the overall condition of the siding, no matter what kind it is. Could be wood, could be vinyl, could be aluminum, brick, stone, composite materials. No matter what the material, you'll be looking for missing material, damaged material, loose flaking paint, improperly installed material, and that's in red for a reason, and we'll get to that, and old, worn, deteriorated material. So some material, most material has some longevity, but there comes a point, maybe more with a wood siding, where you may have to make a call and say that it needs to be replaced. I don't remember too many times where I thought the whole entire site, usually that Homosote and some of the old composite material, when it would get wet, would just deteriorate. At that point, there was no material to repair it with. So that kind of stuff, I would say, should be replaced in its entirety. But, sometimes wood could be patched up. You pull out some, bad clapboard, put some new stuff in. Same thing with shingles. Vinyl, if you look at the top right, and this is kind of common, I see it quite a bit, where that piece of vinyl is popped out. That's at the band joist between at the ceiling, or first floor ceiling, second floor floor. When that wood shrinks, if that material is not installed properly, it's going to pop out like that. So I see that a lot more in new construction. But if you look at that, siding is not very well installed, because if you look at some of those other areas there, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there's more siding ready to pop out there. That's a condo that was poorly installed, and I had to make a note of it, even though that buyer can't go out there and fix it or negotiate it. They got to pass it on to the association. And then just, that house bottom right was a 150-year-old farmhouse in Milford that just hasn't been maintained properly. Some of that cedar was actually punky and rotting. So besides flaking and painting, there was a lot of damage to the siding that had to be replaced. And then I don't know if you guys see this or know the term, but the shingles on the bottom left are blind nailed, right? You don't see any nails on them. They're nailed up probably at the middle of the next course. In this case, they're overexposed. If you expose too much of the shingle, they're going to lift, they're going to cup, they're going to crack. And then at that point in time, there's no nailing them off either. Because
how much is overexposure? Is there a measurement?
Depends on the shingle, Jim.
What's that?
I said, oh, sorry. I was going to say it depends on the shingle. The manufacturer will tell you what the reveal is. Certain types of shingles can have 7-inch, 5-inch. You can even have 12-inch, as you see on some of those old ones. And a lot of these guys don't know what they're doing. Newer stuff.
Well, a lot of they try to get more coverage by overexposing the shingle. Right. And if it's allowed to have that much exposure, it usually is not going to cup, curl, lift, or crack. So there were a lot here that were in bad shape. It's hard. It doesn't really show on this picture, but there were some issues with this as well. So, but it was keeping the water out, right? It was functional, doing its job, but you can't really poo-poo the need for maintenance in any of these cases. There was no water leaking in the house that was visible anyways.
Stan,
Then on
can
the
you,
outside, you're always looking for openings where there's penetrations that need to be caulked to keep that water out of the house. So there's a lot to look at with the siding material. As far as maintenance is concerned, I mean, big time repairs will stick out like a sore thumb, but you just got to look at everything. Next
Stan,
slide,
can you
Jim.
just, can you, while you're still on with the shingles, can you just explain to some of our members on, fairly new, what when you go to do an inspection on, what are the things that you look, I mean, the obvious is here because it's older. What are some of the things you look for with the newer stuff to kind of give an indication whether it's the correct reveal, it was installed correctly? What do you, and that can apply to roofing too, but roofing, it's, that's a whole nother.
So I did a little bit of siding, and it's the exposure is usually 4.5 to 5 inches, clapboard, most shingles. So I kind of look at that. Anything more than that, you really need to know what that manufacturer required. And we're not going to know unless there's a box of the shingles laying, just like a roof, right? You might find a bundle of shingles in a garage underneath the workbench or something. You might be able to tell from that how old it is, when it was installed. But other than that, you're kind of on your own. So it's very difficult to make and we're going to talk about this, I think, in the next slide, to make a definitive recommendation. So I look to make sure that material's not lifting, whether it's a roof shingle or a house shingle, and just the overall condition. And poor maintenance is what I find more than anything else. Deferred maintenance.
Also,
So,
too, guys, I always check, and you don't have to pull on it, but if it's newer, it should be pretty tight. If you put your finger on the bottom of that shingle and you can lift that thing way up, it might be overexposed, nailed in properly, and new shingles, and even stuff that's seasoned, it should be pretty tight. I mean, you're going to have stuff loosen up. I mean, it's wood, but those are some of the things I've had siding guys that I've known throughout the years that told me to look for. But today, with all these guys out there who are not like the old craftsmen of the day that don't know what they're doing, we're finding a lot of issues with all the clapboard. And
sure, and a lot of it can be taken care of when you're painting or staining the house. You have a bad shingle, so sometimes painters can do that work. Sometimes painters can't. You got to have somebody come in, but you really need to know what material needs maintenance before you paint or stain. And that's an ideal time, unless it's really bad, and you got to get in there beforehand to make the necessary repairs. So proper installation methods for siding, for anything actually, because I monitor a whole bunch of Facebook home inspection groups. A lot of guys are out there trying to verify that things are installed per manufacturer's recommendations. Nowhere in any SOP are home inspectors required to verify that a component or material is installed properly. While many inspectors attempt to know it all, this is a slippery slope and should be avoided at all costs, in my opinion. Because once you tell somebody or appear to have an expertise in an area that might require a license, like heating, air conditioning, things of that nature, then you better be right on the money. If to me, I always, if I and I might know there's a problem, I might not, but it might not look right to me, I'll just tell them to have a professional in that field come in and evaluate it. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to get evaluated right, because the guy that put that in was probably a professional in the field, but you've done your job by passing that on. But I don't see how anybody can know how every single piece of material in a house should be installed by manufacturer's recommendation. That's a big job. So just question the installation, refer to a qualified technician or contractor. Flashing and trim. So a lot of guys don't want you to see the flashing, especially siding guys, right? There's supposed to be what, 2-3 inches clearance between the roof and the siding material. You should be seeing the step flashing there, but I know siding guys that just won't do that. So you get that weathering, the rotting, the paint failure at that seam. This is what it looks like when the siding that's just a bad installation, no matter how you look at it, because some of the siding comes down to the roof, and in other areas the siding is exposed, so they probably had a leak there. But that's what you don't want to see. And then here with the siding off is the flashing in place. I don't have a picture of the siding installed on that, but there you should still be able to see several inches of that flashing, so that that wood is not, or whatever siding is not sitting in the wet roofing material. And then I see an awful lot of the cladding or wrap on vinyl and aluminum houses missing. So there's a little piece way up in the gable there. There's a big piece on this rake. And the problem is the tools that you need and the time that it takes to replace those two, that's on the same house, by the way, to replace those two pieces, because that's almost 3 stories up in the air. It is a big undertaking, and nobody wants to do the job unless they bang you real good for that installation. So it at least around here, it's hard to get somebody to come in and replace pieces of the aluminum that are missing. If you see any that are loose, I think you should report on it, because a good wind will blow them off. But these are the kind of things that you want to identify. Not that wood's going to get damaged, but it's now meant to be enclosed. Now you got to get up there. You're going to leave that off and just paint that little section every once in a while. That should be repaired. If you look really close at that house, though, that one in the bottom left, that roof's not in great shape either. So that house was kind of poorly maintained. Okay, Jim. Exterior doors provide entry to the structure, but more importantly, emergency egress. So besides their physical condition, they really need to open and operate properly, because if you have to leave the house in an emergency through there, you can't be fighting with the door to get out. It can't be sticking, can't have an extra lock on the inside. It has to be that's keyed, that you really need to be able to get out of the house. And everything around it, which you step on, needs to be in good shape. You can't have a 9-inch, 10-inch drop from the threshold down to the stoop. That's a tripping hazard. You can't have rotted material like that. You would wonder how a house can get, that was a side entrance that wasn't used a lot, but you wonder how something gets that bad. They do. Trim usually sits on that threshold and rots out. See that an awful lot. Steel doors, when water gets into them, they rust. That bottom left picture. And then this isn't a really good picture, but wood doors, when they don't have protection and they're not sealed properly, the wood materials will split. And that's more an aesthetic issue, but wind can blow through those doors, cold air. So these are the kind of things that I look for on exterior doors. When I find them, I write them up.
Hey, Stan, question. On the upper right-hand picture on this right here,
yep.
When you write your report, you obviously put that there's trim rot. Do you put any limitation of inspection when you're writing to say this is a visual examination, we don't know what's happening underneath, behind?
Yes. Well, I put that there could be more damage than you can see. So, that plan, you got to take that material off and assess the scope of work.
Right. Okay.
Most of the time, I'll know if that's termite or not. Sometimes I think we've all seen it, or if you're doing your own inspections for termite, where it's really hard to tell if it's termite or just decay. If I have any question, I put termite down. I don't care if they bring somebody in and they go, "Oh, that's not termite. That guy's an asshole." I covered my butt and I got somebody to look at that for a second opinion. So
Gotcha.
if there's any question that it might be termite, I say it is. So the house that had the cladding missing and that bad roof, this is their 2-story deck.
Oof.
That's a repair. So obviously this sticks out like a sore thumb, and this is something that you're not going to see every day. But if you just look at some of the railing down there, they just took a piece of railing material and nailed it off, and then tied the newel post to the baluster. Here they put a second post in to hold a second floor portion up, but it's not posting down to the ground. So that whole thing was sagging in. And then I don't even know what the top 2 pictures were supposed to, what those repairs were supposed to do. That deck right now is pristine. The people that moved in, they put a roof on the house. That whole deck was rebuilt. It's near the water in Milford. It's awesome now. But these are the kind of things that if you miss something like this, then you need to get a job at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. But this is a no-brainer. But just be prepared for anything when you're on the outside of the house. Okay, Jim. So what do you feel about, I call them Bigfoots. What do you feel about them on a asphalt surface or a concrete surface like that?
They're supposedly illegal for decks in Connecticut.
What's that?
They're supposedly illegal to use on a deck in Connecticut.
Well, it's not normal building practice, right? I mean, I think the building department would want footings underneath there, cut through the asphalt, whatever.
We see these all the time, though.
But that whole structure was not built right, but it was pretty solid. But I recommended that it, have somebody come in and go through that and bring it up to current standards, which would probably mean taking the whole thing apart, because where the steps meet the house, there was like a 3-inch gap. A kid could step into. It was just a mess. It was solid, but it was a mess. And 2 floors on a deck. I've seen that a couple times. But that's a 2-story portion up. Yep, that picture where the post is driving down and push the original floor down. So we're not going to fix that. We're just going to put a second floor on to make it level. And then anytime I see a stairwell that wide with no risers, I call for a 3rd stringer in there in the middle.
And there's no grippable handle, graspable handle.
No, but so here's what I do. I mean, nobody knows when a deck was built. A lot of times you don't know if it was built with a permit. So every deck, unless it was built yesterday, or finished, I tell people to have a contractor come in, evaluate the structure, and bring it up to current standards. Because I'll tell them, look, there's supposed to be a graspable railing on this. Maybe there's no joist hangers. This picture down, yeah. So there, that's ready to go. If you look, that's a scissor effect there. That's not the right way to build that. So those are the kind of things I tell them, look, you and your wife come out for coffee, the deck may last for a while. Put 10, 15 people on there, that thing may go. It really needs to be evaluated. Again, I'm taking the liability off of me, and they're getting their coverage by me saying that.
These posts look undersized too.
Those are 4x4s. They were probably acceptable, but I wouldn't build with them. But we don't know what the requirements were when that deck was built, even if there was a permit pulled for it. So there's one that got a little bit of settlement there. If you look at it, I tried to get a picture of it from far away to show that the whole front of that deck is nosing down. But those top 2 pictures were from a house like 1920. Now, I don't know if somebody put that new material on there, that's composite board and some new railings and stuff like that, with the deck in that condition, or if it happened afterwards, but it wasn't good. Weathered wood that hasn't been oiled or painted or stained. I see that a lot. raised grain. Got to get a handle on that. This deck, this upper portion of the deck in that lower left-hand picture is fastened to a cantilever, or not a cantilever, but a bow window. That's not good. It's actually leaning back towards the house, and so is the bottom deck. I know pictures on an angle, but it was. So there's a whole lot wrong with that that structure right there. But these are the kind of things you got to kind of pick out and report on. So concrete stoops, my favorite, the precast especially. You know, the poured concrete there is deteriorated, obviously. Can you fix that? Some people think they can. It's just going to get that way again. The hollow ones that are filled with dirt, like the one on the bottom, you know, they start to deteriorate in the edges. Can you fix that? That probably can hold up for a while if you patched all that up. A second concern besides structural is animals getting in there and calling it home. And then stone treads that are deteriorated down in the bottom left-hand corner. That's a fairly easy fix, but all this kind of stuff needs to be corrected. If you, to me, if you have 3 risers or more, you should have a railing. I even tell people with 2 that they may want a railing just to have a little more stability when it's icy or wet.
This is a landing.
That's a landing, yes.
Right. So you got 1, 2, and then a landing.
Correct.
But you're right. You probably should have a railing here.
But that stoop is 30 inches high, and you don't need a railing with a deck or a porch or a stoop that's at 30 inches. But I tell them that they should. So stoop rotation, I see a lot, right? Those are very heavy. They sink into the ground. If you look at the one in the top right, left, that bottom riser is gone. Does that make a difference if it's that close to the ground? To me, it does. The upper corners chipped off so animals can get in there. And then the one down on the bottom didn't even have a landing. So
I love it when the agents open up a lockbox and the key falls between the stairs in the house. That's the best. Makes the day start so good.
Oh well, time to reschedule. So I've seen in newer construction, the precast stoops are hung off of or on a angle iron that's bolted to the foundation, and then there's footings at the different points of the front of the stoop anyways, and usually works pretty good. So even if you have settlement around there, because don't forget that is part of the finished grading after they backfill, at least the stoop isn't moving. So that's one way, probably the best way to handle the stoops. Sometimes you can't see if they are footed, and you can't see if there's an angle iron, but most of the time you can. That's generally in relatively new construction that I see anyways around here.
Was that Woody? Where you stand?
Looks like him, huh?
Yeah.
That's okay. So other things to look for on the exterior. Okay, Tim. So gazebos. Is a gazebo considered a deck, outbuilding, or do you just disclaim it? I don't know. If it's a pretty extensive carpentry piece, I probably look it over and make comments on it. Some of these pool gazebos and things like that, I disclaim. I tell them that's not covered as part of the inspection, especially if it's not fastened to the ground in any way.
A lot of times you see rot. You know, a lot of stuff it's rotted. I pointed out.
Yeah, but
fence around a pool.
Where does this structure fall in somebody's standards?
That's not part of the house. Not part of the house. I mean, it's like a shed, right? I mean,
it's an outbuilding, a shed.
You know, I look at them. I mean, everybody can run it the way they want, but I always take a look at them.
Well, that's all I'm pointing out now. You have to decide how you want to handle stuff like this. There's more to come. Okay,
and you know the uncle or grandfather or Uncle Joe is over there. Hey, what about this? What about that? You know,
so part of what you may see on the outside of the house is evidence of termite. Maybe not a lot, but you may, and termite treatment. So you have to keep your eyes open for that on the exterior, even though it's not in anybody's standards probably. But if you are doing the termite yourself, if you hire somebody else to do it, then that's their job. But I am going to tell you, if you do that, the reason why I do it myself now is because for several years I had another company come and they would leave the house and, you know, before I even got inside with my clients and say, you're good. And they'd hand the paperwork over. And then as soon as I get in there, I find a mud tube or some termite damage and I got to call them back, or they didn't show up. So after a while, I watched them do it so much and I'm looking at all the same spots they're looking at. So I do it myself right now. But these are the kind of things that you got to keep your eyes open for. And I think you should do it even if you have a pest control company come, because now you kind of back them up and make sure they're doing a job right. Okay, Tim.
Agreed.
Buried oil tanks. Do we
Right.
have to find them per standards? No. If there's one on the property and you miss it, you're in a world of hurt. So keep your eyes open, inside and outside, for anything that may be related to any kind of buried vessel, to be honest with you. So at least you can make a comment and protect yourself. But that's what you might see on the outside. Maybe not that high. That's a dead giveaway. But, you know, we still find them. And they may be active. They may be decommissioned. But we need to know more. Debris in the yard. So I do point that out. And if I see debris in a yard, under a deck, I make comments, and I have a miscellaneous on exterior that debris in the yard should be removed. When I bought my house, I have an oversized two-car garage. There was stuff up in the rafters. I was so excited about getting the house that I let the guy leave the shit in the garage. And it was so much work getting rid of it. I thought people were putting stuff in as I was taking it out. I underestimated how much was there. So that's one less thing you want to deal with after you purchase a home. I make comments on it. It's not part of any scope. And I know a lot of realtors don't care for that, but I do. And if they leave it there, they leave it there. That's actually somebody who was building some kind of platform or something. But I had an instance where there was a piece of plywood out in the yard, and I just thought it was a piece of plywood. I didn't pick it up. It was covering an old abandoned septic system or something. I forgot, it was so long ago, but the realtor covered my ass. It was a Chinese realtor and all her clients were Chinese, and she convinced them that I wasn't responsible to look underneath there. So she covered my butt. I would pick up every piece of plywood on the yard from now on. Detached garages. Of course, I'm sure most people look at them, but they're not mentioned in Connecticut SOPs and any other one that I looked at. So they must be considered an outbuilding. And if you have a section in your report and you want to cover outbuildings, then you cover them. If not, you got to disclaim it. But they're getting taxed on that building, that's for sure. So I think they should be inspected. And I do have a garage section, so it doesn't make a difference if it's detached or attached. I go through both of them the same way, except no concern for fire, walls and ceilings and stuff like that, doors here, but all the rest of the stuff is the same.
Didn't Gary from Massachusetts, didn't he say that he has to do two reports, separate report? Is that true, Gary? You have to do a separate report for an outbuilding or detached garage. I don't know if he's hearing. He might have. You gotta turn your mic on. Mic here.
No, his volume's down.
I thought he said Massachusetts has to do a separate one.
It does.
Just
let's move on.
So exclusions. Okay, Jim.
Yep. Sorry.
Pools, right? In ground, above ground. I know a lot of guys around here will offer that as an add-on, a pool inspection. I think I've mentioned it before that unless I wouldn't do it I have one. I know a lot about at least above ground pools, but I wouldn't do it unless I was doing that day in, day out. I only take on responsibility for stuff that I consider myself an expert at. So, but these are excluded. I may look at them really quick for people, but I make sure they know, and they should know before they even come to the inspection, that pools are not part of the inspection. Okay, Jim.
How many
Pool
guys,
decks.
you guys, I mean, I have a pool guy I work with. Some of them just do gunite. The other ones will do both. And I tell my client, if you want it, it's up to you. And I offer that to them. I mean, I'll look at the pad. I might look at certain things, and like Stan, I have above ground pool. I could tell you all about those. And it's not the end of the world if I look at an above ground, but in ground, everybody here usually say, hey, do you want a pool inspection? I'll bring somebody in. Here's a number. What do most of the guys do here? I always set it up for them. Maybe I'll take a little fee if I have to, just for making the call. That's just me personally. My time is money. But what do most of you guys out there do?
They're all muted right now, Scott.
Yeah, they're all muted, Scott. So basically,
I
like
have
Stan
them get
said,
their own pool person.
Okay.
So I do the same. I don't give them any numbers. I said, look, if you want to know more about this, then you got to get somebody down here. But because I talked to them before the inspection, I probably already know they have some type of pool, and I told them ahead of time so they have some time to schedule it if they wanted to.
Stan, will you put in a lack of self-closing gates and alarms on doors?
I'm not getting into that.
No, but let me
Okay.
tell you, Jim, because a lot of these houses in Westport and Darien, the people, at least the people I deal with, they're like, some of those high end, and Stan, you've dealt with them before. They're just like, just get everybody for me. I don't want, I don't know who to call. I'm from New York and I'm coming into Connecticut. So I do, and we'll have the guy that's going to do a pool. I'm going to have a guy that's going to do a pool presentation for us. And I use him. He's great. I've never had any problems, and he's found a lot of stuff and saved my clients. So, like, again, everybody can do it how they want to do it. But when you start to get into those expensive houses, it's something good to, they just want you to handle everything and just get them all there. And, I know everybody's worried about if they screw up, you referred them. I'll be honest, I've been doing this since 2003 and I've never had a problem. And if there's anything small, they've always taken care of it, which is rare. But that's just something to think about, especially if you're dealing with these high-end homes and some of these really expensive pools.
Jim, go back. So just wondering if you guys consider pool decks the same as a deck on a house. I don't have a problem looking at a wood deck. I don't know how much I'd want to look at the metal decks that come with some of those pools. So you got to figure out how you want to handle that.
And a lot of those decks that you buy at Namco and all that, they're not footed. They're just like the one on the left there. So me personally, I built one and I used the elephant's feet, and you could probably, unless it's a huge hurricane or tornado, you won't be able to move my deck around my pool is probably just as strong as my deck, other than minus the footings, and you could take it down and move it elsewhere. But you can buy those $2,500 decks. You see them just sitting up and there's no footings on them. They just go around the pool. So, it depends. A lot of decks that we see, Stan, and Jim, we've all seen them. Most of the guys, a lot of them are built just like they're just not connected. They're freestanding and they have footings. So
saunas and hot tubs, not part of anybody's SOPs. They're excluded. Next, Jim. Propane tanks. So do we talk about what we know regarding installations, or do we completely disclaim them as being excluded from the SOPs and outside the scope of the inspection? So we had a propane guy talk to us. I think it's a lot of good information that we can pass along about location and why they're supposed to be away from windows and electrical and all that stuff. But you got to figure out, once you mention it, you're probably going to have to report on it. So you either disclaim it or you get into it, in my opinion. But I know our SOPs do not require that we talk about propane.
That leads to the other issue when you are going outside the SOP. If you get into the weeds with an attorney, they're going to say, you went outside the SOP on this and you didn't do it on other things.
Correct.
You didn't, so it's really difficult because if we see a propane tank right underneath a window, we need to call it out. But I guess there's also ways of writing it up saying that it is not part of the SOP. I do recommend that you have it evaluated by a propane professional.
I think that would help cover your butt if there was ever a sticky situation, because at least you made a recommendation.
And you want to protect the client.
So outbuildings. Do we walk by a little shed like that one on the left, but do we charge extra money for a barn like that one up on the upper right or the lower right? Those are, fairly easy inspections, and you can make a couple bucks off them. So a shed and an outbuilding is probably two different, at least in my book. I don't mind walking around a shed, and if it's a piece of junk, it's a piece of junk. If it looks pretty good, it looks pretty good. I'm not going to put it in my report, but those buildings I'm charging extra money for, and I'll do a little more detailed evaluation, and I'll put them in as an outbuilding. So, but that's me. Fencing is a big issue because people want to know if it's their fence or not. They see pieces falling down, and I got to tell them we don't even know who that fence belongs to. You're going to have to get a survey. Somebody's going to have to take ownership of the fence, and then you can determine if it's your responsibility or not. It's kind of difficult. So, if you want to make a note that fencing that surrounds the property was unidentified as the ownership and is in need of repair, so you make a recommendation that they follow up on that, I guess that's okay. But you also have to say that we're not bound by the SOPs to inspect them or report on them. So do you give them a heads up, or you just totally forget about it completely?
I look at it, give them a heads up.
So food for thought. Standards of practice are thin and restricted for several reasons. Some inspectors stick to them. However, most will go beyond. Be careful when making comments regarding specific methods of repair or installation, as projecting expertise, especially regarding a licensed trade, can be used against you in a court of law. If you report on an item that is excluded by SOPs of your state, be sure to indicate that it is a courtesy comment on an item that is outside the scope of the inspection. So these are things that, with the exception of the top one, the other two were told to me by several attorneys, mine included, the guy that helped me start my company 35 years ago. I used to have an oil company come and do all my oil heating stuff. He said, because they're coming on your behalf, they're going beyond the standards. People may think that you should have gone beyond the standards in other areas. And he cautioned me. Well, again, these people dropped the ball so many times on at least showing up and a couple other things that I said, you know what, if I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to get myself in trouble. I don't need to bring somebody else in to make me look bad. So I cut them loose as well. And if I know Scott likes to bring people in and he charges a little big. I don't do that anymore. I may give them a few numbers, 2, 3, 4 for septic or well, but I'm not going to be responsible for anybody else's work, even though they tell me I'll take care of it if there's a problem. I had all those people sign what do you call them?
Disclosure.
Where they release me a liability and they take care of it, but I just didn't want to deal with that anymore. So in summary, the exterior inspection is as important as any other component of the home. Problems on the exterior can cause water infiltration into the basement, create a damp environment that can lead to decay. Deferred maintenance can cause safety issues with walks, entryways, and wood structures, as well as create costly repairs to siding and trim. So it is as important as any other component, and is, like we said at the beginning, interrelated to other parts of the inspection that may be on the interior. So we got to keep our eyes open. We got to find all those things, and we got to report on them. What's next, Jim? So thank you very much for attending. I'm sorry this wasn't solar, but you'll get credit anyways. This was supposed to be in a couple of weeks, so we'll just replace that with something else when we get to that date. I'm not sure we're gonna have the solar guys back.
No, they're dead to us.
last minute. No, sorry, I apologize. It was my guy, but
It's all right.
Well, no, you didn't.
we'll get him back.
Just getting back to the exterior a little bit. I know, most of the guys here are seasoned, but I train people. And I tell them when when you get to the house and you drive through the neighborhood, take a look at the other houses. Are people taking in their garbage? Are there any radon mitigation systems? Just sort of give you an idea of what the neighborhood's like. And then I tell them, start the exterior inspection the same way on each house. Picture on the front.
Yes.
Move, if you're a righty, move to the right. If you're a lefty, move to the left. Walk around. If you're taking pictures, set your system that you're walking around the house at least 25, 30 times. I know that I've been walking around houses and I'll go around a house 15 times. On the 16th time, I'll see something so blaring. Like, why didn't I see that? The second time, the third time. I'm not somebody who just sits there and does the front of the house, the left side, the right side, the rear. I want to be walking around, taking in the house, looking at all the components of the house, but coming up with a system where you're doing it the same way every time. So this way you do not miss it. The other thing that I've heard back, coming to the inspection early can be an issue, because if you're sort of getting there early, getting the work done, then the client comes, it can be a little disconcerting for newer inspectors if the client shows up with you at, if you're scheduled for 4:00, everybody shows up at 4:00, you're used to doing that hour's work, previous to and just doing a review to the client showing up. That could be a little distressing too for an inspector, and, throw them off, a new inspector, and throw them off their game a little bit. So try to come up with patterns so that you're seeing, so that you're doing the same kind of inspection each time, and it'll make life a lot easier for you.
And to add to Jim, the other thing too is, especially after COVID, is I always like to go early, hour, half hour to exactly, I like to get everything done outside, get all the paperwork done, and then just go over with my client. Knock on the, ring the doorbell. I mean, we all do it. Listen, the homeowners are home sometimes, and I want to throw my ladder up, get up on the roof, get up to the roof, do whatever I got to do, walk around the back. And I always try to let the tenants, the homeowners know that I'm there. And I'll let you know, doorbells don't always work, and I've been screamed at, and it doesn't start for an hour. So I'll knock on the door. At least if I do that, then I don't have a problem. And the other thing too is sometimes I can get a lot of information from that homeowner. The exact age of the roof. When did you put the siding? I mean, if you look and go, oh, new, how old's your roof? And they'll give me a lot of information. And you can get a lot of information from them. Some of them are like, oh, I don't really know. It's like been there when I bought it. But sometimes they'll share a lot of info with you, which is helpful to give to your clients. And I don't know if everybody else does that if you go early and do that. But exactly what Jim says, keep the pattern. I do the same thing all the time. And family members will be like, what about this? What about that? You have to say time out, stop. I have a routine I go by. Once I get over there, then I'll answer your questions. And I will tell you from personal experience 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to share this with you. Tell your family members, the guy that's the contractor, uncle or brother, and I don't care if they come. They don't intimidate me, and I welcome them to come and give input and all this. But what I will tell them again is don't touch anything. So I had a father went in, and it was a galvanized pipe connected to PVC, and there was a little bit of rust at one of the unions, and he broke it, and water was pouring down in the basement, and he was going to get Flex Seal, and I said, stop, time out, enough. So all these people that want to turn off, shut off valves and do all this stuff, I have to say it again when they're all standing there, don't touch nothing. If you see something that's a problem, let me know. I'm lucky because you know what, they're going to come after you when they break something, even though it's, the family member, they're going to try to get you for it. So you just got to tell the family to I appreciate the help, or don't let the water overflow in the sink in a $3 million house, and then you're going to get 20 towels to soak it up. I mean, we've all had those incidents, but the family members can be a pain. And Stan knows we were on one time, and we all got screamed at for the dirt on the floor.
Jim,
1,000 dirt marks, you know?
Could you
Yes,
go back
Dan.
to that picture?
Which one?
Which one?
WDI, is that the one with the drill marks? Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
okay.
only two, right?
On the front
Right there,
steps?
right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What's the question?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, you can turn your mic on.
Who's asking a question? Type it if they can't do it.
No, they did. I said, could we go back to the WDI picture? I have a question. Is it you, Kyle? Drill holes for treatment. The arrows are pointing to drill holes in the front stoop. So when I do any rigid surface against the house, I am looking for drill holes that would indicate treatment, previous treatment. And then I ask for paperwork and hoping to find that it was treated within the last 5 years. So I know we're at 8 o'clock, but I just want to make a comment. So this is the first time that we've had somebody, I think, drop out on us at last minute. So after 20 some odd years with the Connecticut Association of Home Inspectors and providing education, basically by Scott doing it, we've learned to have backup. The other thing I wanted to say was that we have to make sure that all the states that we deal with are approving the subject matter that we are presenting. And most of them want us to stick to their state standards. So for instance, Connecticut doesn't really, we have to have 75 core, what they call core. So exterior, interior, mechanicals, roofing, stuff like that. The other 25 could be radon, could be mold, could be septic because it's not considered part of the house. So we have to work within those parameters for all these states. So I mean, anybody that's inspected for 20, 25 years, probably this kind of information is just a rehash or a refresher. But a lot of times we're going to have to stick to what your standards say, just so you guys know. So we try to make it fresh and break it up, but sometimes we're a little bit restricted on what we can do. We've had a couple, mainly by Rhode Island, and now we know why. Our electricals were denied a couple times. So, you know, just bear with us. We're trying to get good stuff, but also stuff that they're going to approve so we can get educated. So thanks for attending, guys. Thanks for putting up with the mix-up in the, not mix-up, but the change in the information. But like I said, you'll get credit for it no matter what.
Certificates are going to go out tomorrow morning. And then right now we have September 17th, Understanding AZEK Exteriors, October 3rd, Benjamin Obadike Roof and Wall Products. So we do have a couple of speakers coming up the next 2 sessions. So thank you for everybody for coming tonight.
All right, guys, have a good evening.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, man.